Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum, dear friends and participants of this Quran for Teams class. I welcome you to another session. And today, as you might all be knowing, our topic relates to parents and their mention in the Quran. And this is, of course, a very important topic in this particular context that today, when we are all facing and being afforded with this tremendous freedom and liberty as well as an independence in which we can exercise our decisions, take big decisions in life. Of course, we need not forget that we have been brought into this world by our mothers and fathers who have been of special help, special service, in fact, if I may call it selfless service for us. And as children, as people who grow up in a world which is increasingly very demanding, increasingly very focused on certain skill developments and the inner aptitude that you have, and the professional lives that you would be entering soon, as well as your own studies that might be pulling you along these days. At times it becomes very difficult to maintain a balance vis-a-vis some of your responsibilities towards your parents, and at the same time maintain a very high level of proficiency in your own affairs, like in your studies, in your professional field. So this is something, my dear participants, that the Quran has made us realize time and again that whatever we do in our life, whatever our future should depend upon, we must never forget that first bond, that first origin from which we all began, from which we all started, and of course, that is our parents. So today I'm going to present to you some verses from the Quran, and we will study these verses. I'll try to explain some of them, and then inshallah we'll also attempt some of the comprehension questions so that all of us are more aware, more sensitive towards our obligations towards our parents. So yes, let me share the screen with you. You can see the first verse that is being shared. This is verse 14 from Surah number 31, and this verse is part of the Saj Luqman. We know that Luqman was, or this is something which happened in his own time that Arabs knew very well, and his admonition, his advice has been preserved in the Quran in a surah which goes by his name, is Surah Luqman, and he was advising or counseling his child regarding what he has to do. So he spoke about Tawheed, he spoke about good deeds, and in between this speech, there were some verses which spoke about how we should be considerate of our parents. So the verse goes, وَوَصَّيْنَا الْإِنسَانَ بِوَالِدَيْهِ حَمَلَتْهُ أُمُّهُ this seems to be okay. وَوَصَّيْنَا الْإِنسَانَ بِوَالِدَيْهِ حَمَلَتْهُ أُمُّهُ وَهْنًا عَلَى وَهْنٍ وَفِصَالُهُ فِي عَامَيْنِ أَنِ اشْكُرْ لِي وَلِوَالِدَيْكَ إِلَيَّ الْمَصِيرُ. So the translation would be, and we have counseled man regarding his parents. His mother carried him with weakness upon weakness, and his weaning takes 2 years. And what did the counsel be about? This is now what is spoken in these inverted commas. Show gratitude to me and to your parents, and towards me alone is the return. So, friends, you can see this sentence within the two dashes, and this sentence in technical terms is called a parenthetical sentence. It's just a on the spot explanation. The counsel actually starts from the inverted commas, which you can see begin in the second last line and the last line. They close on the second last line on the last line. So the counsel is show gratitude to me. This is what the Almighty is telling us. And when the word insan is used, of course, which is generally translated as man, do keep this in mind that in ancient languages, the word man or the word insan would encompass humankind. So when the word man is spoken here, it doesn't mean just man or men by their gender. It covers men and women. So it's just a way of speech. It's just a way of speaking that you translate the word insan. You could have translated the word as human being. So more a translation which you have been more comfortable with or more used to would be that, and we have counseled human beings regarding their parents, or we have counseled a human being regarding his parents. So that counsel is show gratitude to me and to your parents, and towards me alone is the return. So we have to be thankful to God. So God is saying you have to show gratitude to me, which is of course the first person being God himself, and to your parents. You have to understand that just as God has been very kind to you, just as God has given a lot to you, and therefore you have to thank God. Look what the Almighty says, that immediately after his right comes the right of the parents. So you can see the juxtaposition, the adjacent placement of these two things, that God places his rights first, and immediately after that he talks about the parents. And the thing that he talks about is common to both. So the Almighty says that you have to show gratitude to me, to God, and to your parents. And for obvious reasons, the way the Almighty has brought you up, and the way your parents have selflessly cared for you, and actually they spent a lot of time, skill, effort, money, and all sorts of things, so that they could make us individuals who become contributing in the society. And then you see, one of the sacrifices, or one of the I would say services which a mother renders to her children, is mentioned right in these words. In these verses, in fact, these are two services that a mother does. One of them is that she carries the child in her womb, and it says that weakness upon weakness, which means that of course this was a debilitating exercise. For 9 months she carried a child, and this caused a lot of health issues to her. It was not an easy thing. For childbearing mothers, you can see how they are stranded virtually in those 9 months, especially the last couple of months. Initially they are able to do some of the things, some of the professional life that they have taken up for themselves, they are able to follow them, but gradually it becomes difficult. And even during the first few months, at times it's not all that easy, and special needs have to be taken care of. And then it says that the weaning of the child takes 2 years, which means that in normal circumstances the mothers suckle their children and they provide milk to them. And this, in normal circumstances, if you stretch it to the whole period, it takes 2 years. Of course, it could be less than 2 years if the choice is always there. And of course, the other choice is also there if a mother does not suckle her child. But remember, the milk of the mother is something which is of profound benefit to the child. So there are many mothers around the world who take it upon themselves to feed their child, breastfeed their child themselves. And again, this is not an easy thing. She is drained, she is debilitated, her energy loss is tremendous, because she has to consume and keep herself going, and then she has to consume and keep her child going as well. So one of the you can clearly see that as far as the mother is concerned, there are two things which she does, which are very prominent, and as a result you can see how the Almighty tells us that we have to be thankful to the parents. And remember, the father is not mentioned here, but still thanks and gratitude have been mentioned, that they should be done to the father also, because although some of his services are not mentioned in this verse, but it doesn't mean that he never had any role. His role is a parent to all of us. I mean, as we grow up in our homes, we can clearly see how fathers, they sacrifice, they serve, they do their best, they earn so that the children can have their best of education, they have a very good home, a very good place to live in, good clothes to wear, and all these things. So it's the father who is generally providing the children. Of course, at many a time mothers are also sharing with this responsibility, but as I said, this is primarily a package. in which a mother and a father come together. So to be thankful to your parents is something which this verse stresses. And do remember the fact that the Almighty has said that right after Himself, which is God Himself, the next right is that of your parents. Okay, now let me go to the second verse. So this is, and I think these are two verses which you might have even memorized, and these verses are generally read in the last part of the prayer. And look what they say: "Rabbi ja'alni muqim as-salati wa min zurriyyati, Rabbana wa taqabbal du'a, Rabbana ighfir li wa liwalidayya wa lil mu'minina yawma yaqumul hisab." So this is the 14th surah, which is called Surah Ibrahim. The verses are 40 to 41, and the translation goes as, "Lord, make me one who is diligent in the prayer, and from my progeny also, who I am settling here." Of course, this is the prayer of Abraham when he was settling his progeny in the land of Mecca. "Lord, and accept this invocation of mine. Lord, forgive me and my parents and all believers on the day when accountability takes place." The particular aspect to note in this set of verses is the prayer which people make or which children make for their parents. So the words are, "Rabbana ighfir li wa liwalidayya," "Oh God, forgive me." So when children pray, they pray for their own forgiveness, and the first thing that they mention right after their own forgiveness is the forgiveness of their parents. And this is of something very significant to note, my dear participants, my dear friends, that as children, all of us, one of the greatest obligations that we have regarding our parents is to pray for their forgiveness. Remember, they are human beings and we are human beings. All of us are human beings, and therefore we can err, we can make mistakes, we can do all sorts of things that we regret, and we would like God to forgive them. And here a child is actually doing his duty and doing his due in praying for his parents by asking and by requesting, by beseeching the Lord Almighty that, "Please God, for all the blemishes that I do, you forgive me." And of course, my parents were also human beings, and as such, they must have made a lot of mistakes, so forgive them also. So the message which this verse conveys is forgiveness. I can say that the first verse we read regarding parents, the basic message of that verse was showing gratitude to parents. And the basic message of this particular verse is to always pray for their forgiveness. Whenever you stand up in prayer, of course, this is a dua that all of you mostly read when you are offering the prayer. And even outside the prayer, whenever you get a chance, this is something that we must do, and we must keep on doing. And again, as I said, just like gratitude, showing gratitude to our parents, praying for the forgiveness of our parents is also a supremely important thing. Now let me go on to the third verse. And this third verse, you might be remembering, is something that we read also when we were reading we were discussing the moral message of the Qur'an some weeks ago. So I have taken that particular chunk, and these are basically 3 verses, and these verses actually tell us how some of our behavior should be regarding our parents. So the words are, وَقَضَى رَبُّكَ أَلَّا تَعْبُدُوا إِلَّا إِيَّاهُ وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا إِمَّا يَبْلُغَنَّ عِندَكَ الْكِبَرَ أَحَدُهُمَا أَوْ كِلَاهُمَا فَلَا تَقُل لَّهُمَا أُفٍّ وَلَا تَنْهَرْهُمَا وَقُل لَّهُمَا قَوْلًا كَرِيمًا وَاخْفِضْ لَهُمَا جَنَاحَ الذُّلِّ مِنَ الرَّحْمَةِ وَقُل رَّبِّ ارْحَمْهُمَا كَمَا رَبَّيَانِي صَغِيرًا. So the translation would be, your Lord has enjoined you to worship none but Him and to treat your parents very well. If either or both of them attain old age before you, show them no sign of impatience, nor scold them while answering. Speak to them with respect and with softness, lower arms of tenderness on them, and keep praying, Lord, be merciful to them, the way they nursed me with love and tenderness in childhood. So this particular set of verses has a number of things to tell us. If you start off right from the beginning, it says you treat your parents very well, you treat your parents with kindness. And then there is something which the verse builds upon and tells us that normally when children grow up and when their parents advance in age, it is here that at times parents become a little irritable because of old age. They behave like children themselves. So the Almighty is telling us that when you grow up and when your children and when your parents advance in age, and then they start behaving like children the way you were children once, show them no sign of impatience. Don't get irritable, nor scold them while answering, which of course means that we have to respect them. We must not be rude to them. We must not have that tantrum throwing that we normally have. We have to be patient with them. And then the verse goes on to say, speak to them with respect and with softness, lower arms of tenderness on them, which again means that respect and regard are the key words that we must always have in our mind. Even when the parents are not advanced in age, they are young parents, there are instances which arise which make us uncomfortable, in which we think that our parents are doing something which is not appropriate. So what these verses tell us is that we have to treat them kindly. We have to be very patient with them. We must not scold them. We must not talk back to them in rude words. And obviously when we do that, we ourselves feel very bad. But then we have to be we have to take preventive measures, that instead of regretting something that we did, let it not happen in the first place. So this is like disciplining ourselves, treating our parents with a lot of affection, with a lot of kindness, with a lot of respect, neither scolding them, nor talking back to them, nor saying something to them which might hurt them. Of course, there are at times things that you can say which might be hurtful to them. But then always remember that this should be in a very, very respectful tone. For example, if you have a difference of opinion regarding your career or maybe regarding any other major decision in life, that is a choice that you can make, and the Almighty has given you the choice. But if your parents at times disagree, and they have this right to disagree, acknowledge that they are your well-wishers. They are trying to suggest to you something which is different, although you have the final say, although you are going to decide, but then this should be as pleasant as possible. So I would say the message of this verse, my dear friends, is showing respect and regard and utmost, giving them utmost importance and even pampering them at times. So if I just recap, I can say that the first verse was about gratitude to parents. The second one was seeking forgiveness for them from the Almighty. And this third verse has the basic message that it gives us is to show intense regard and respect to the parents. Now let me go on to the fourth verse. So this fourth verse is the 8th verse of Surah Ankabut, which is the 29th surah of the Qur'an. It says, وَوَصَّيْنَا الْإِنسَانَ بِوَالِدَيْهِ حُسْنًا وَإِنْ جَاهَدَكَ لِتُشْرِكَ بِي مَا لَيْسَ لَكَ بِهِ عِلْمٌ فَلَا تُطِعْهُمَا إِلَيَّ مَرْجِعُكُمْ فَأُنَبِّئُكُمْ بِمَا كُنْتُمْ تَعْمَلُونَ. So I would translate this as, none has a greater right than God. This is something which is already understood to have been present as a sentence in these verses as we proceed. And then they start off by saying, we have directed human beings to treat their parents with kindness. Remember, this was the same message which the previous verses also gave. They also started off with the same words, that you treat your parents with kindness. But at the same time clarified that if they force you to associate someone with me of which you have no knowledge, then do not obey them. So what this verse is telling us is that if your parents force you or they compel you to do shirk, which is polytheism, about which you have no knowledge, then you don't obey them. Which means that this is one area in which if they compel you to do something, it is absolutely okay that if you don't obey them. And this is something which the Almighty would never want. And by extension, you can clearly see, by analogy I would say, that polytheism of course is something which in the times of the revelation of the Qur'an was something so rampant It was part and parcel of the society in which people were living. And children would time again see if they converted and their parents had not converted, that their parents would also force them to worship idols. And it is here that the Almighty is telling us that as children who grow up, and if our parents do something, ask us something to do something which is against what God has told us, in other words, and it is here that we must not obey them. And it says, "Ilayya marji'ukum fa'unabbi'ukum bima kuntum ta'malun." That it is here that we have to realize that it is towards God which we will all return, and it is something that then God will tell us that what we have been doing. So the message of this verse would be that if parents force us to do something which is against religion, which is against our understanding of religion or our understanding of the rights of God, then we are, if we disobey them, if we do not follow what they are doing, then it is absolutely fine. And as you can see, as I just said also, that this was something very common in the Arabian society of those times, because, as I said, polytheism was everything in the society. It was the biggest value which that society upheld. But by analogy today, we can see that although polytheism might not be existent in that form, by extension we can say that if parents force you to do something which is against the basic rules of religion, then you have to put your foot down, and you have to tell them that, well, I am not going to do something which I consider something as against religion. And now, my dear friends, I would like to talk to you about this final verse, which is verse 15 of Surah number 46, which is Surah Ahqaf. It says, وَوَصَّيْنَا الْإِنسَانَ بِوَالِدَيْهِ إِحْسَانًا حَمَلَتْهُ أُمُّهُ كُرْهًا وَزَعَفَ كُرْهًا حَمَلَتْهُ أُمُّهُ كُرْهًا. I think there is some وَوَضَعَتْهُ كُرْهًا. I'm sorry, I could not have read this. So حَمَلَتْهُ أُمُّهُ كُرْهًا وَوَضَعَتْهُ كُرْهًا وَحَمْلُهُ وَفِصَالُهُ ثَلَاثُونَ شَهْرًا حتى إذا بلغ أشده وبلغ 40 سنة قال رب أوزعني أن أشكر نعمتك التي أنعمت علي وعلى والدي وأن أعمل صالحا ترضاه وأصلح لي في ذريتي إني تبت إليك وإني من المسلمين. So, a translation of this verse would be, if you want to understand how people become thorough and become unjust to their souls, then listen. So it's like saying that there are two extremes, and if you want to understand how these happen, then just listen to this, what the Almighty has to say. We have enjoined a human being to show kindness to his parents. And my dear participants, this is the third verse you can clearly see, which has exactly the same verse, exactly the same word, which is showing kindness to parents, which is to treat them well. In the last three verses, three sets of verses, and this is the third of them, we can see the stress is continuing, and that is to show kindness to the parents. With great difficulty, his mother carried him in her womb. It is here that she carried in her womb, and with great difficulty, she delivered him. And this was, of course, mentioned earlier on as well, carried him and then weaned him. But here we have an extra mention that she delivered him with great difficulty. We know that labor pains and the way children are brought into this world, if the process is natural, this is very, very painful for the mother. And this is one of the very, very, I would say, horrifying and maybe terrible experiences which mother have, because once they are delivering the child, the amount of pain that they are suffering generally is much more. And again, this is done purely for the child. So it says that delivered him, and his carrying and weaning took place almost in 3 months. For example, you have that the children being born and then being fed. So that would take, as it says, that the total number are salasuna shahra. It's actually, this is a small error here. It says 3 months. It should be 30 months. It's not 3, it's 30. So, of course, the fact being that there are a couple of months of pregnancy in which the child is being carried, and then there are the months in which mother suckles her child. So please do make this correction. It's not 3, it's 30. So finally, after passing through all these stages, when a human being fully matures and becomes 40 years old, he prays, give, God, give me the urge to express gratitude for your favor which you did to me and to my parents and to those righteous deeds, and to do those righteous deeds which please you, and also create kindness for me in my children. I turn to you, and indeed I am from among the obedient. So this is a slightly longish verse, and if you just pick up the message which it tells us is that on the one hand we have to be thankful to our parents, especially our mother, because she carried us and then she delivered us and then she suckled us. And you can clearly see that these are the three areas in which a mother is doing something unique, something much more, I mean something very unique if the father does. So when she carries you in her, when she delivers you, and when she suckles you, all these three things are unique to the mother. And it is because of this that we think, and the Prophet is also have reported to have said that a mother has 3 times more rights on us than our father, because this is three areas primarily in which she was unique in offering this service to us. And then look what the verse says. It says that finally, after passing through all these stages, these 3 stages which I just enumerated, when a human being fully matures and becomes 40 years old, he prays, God, give me the urge to express gratitude for your favor which you did to me and to my parents, and to do those righteous deeds which please you. So it's like telling God Almighty that the favor that He did to us, this is an expression of our thankfulness to the Almighty, that we would like to express this fact that by the age of 40, if this is something that is still continuing in us and we are still not being able to discharge the rights of the Almighty, then it is here that we have to be very careful. So the verse is like telling us that in the first 40 years of your life, if you do something bad, something evil, there are very huge chances of God forgiving you if you adopt the right behavior. So it's like giving you a concession in the first 40 years of your life. But if you continue to do those bad things even after you cross 40 years of age, then the Almighty says that He'll be very strict on you. And then look what the ending part of this verse tells us. It says, create kindness for me in my children. Aslih li fi zurriyati. And this is the the primary message which this actually verse gives. And this tells us that you are actually praying for your children. As a parent, the parent is telling or praying to God and asking Him that create kindness for me as a parent in my children. So you remember we had this verse earlier on in which we were praying for our parents. It is the reverse here. Now the parents are praying for the children before the Almighty that God make them kind for me. When I grow old and I have children, let them be kind to me. Let them to be respectful to me. Let them be polite and gentle to me. So you can see that just as we are praying for our parents, this verse talks us and tells us that as parents, we have to pray to God to grant us children who are kind to us when we grow old, or when we have actually discharged our rights and we expect them now to take the lead. So my dear participants, these were the 5 verses which I just wanted to let you know vis-a-vis some of the important areas in the Qur'an which relate to parents, and there are some other verses as well, but I would say that these are 5 very basic verses which tell us or which advise us, or which actually ask us to deliberate on them, that what exactly are the rights that we have on our parents. So remember, just to recap, that we have to show gratitude to them, that we have to ask for their forgiveness, that we have to be kind to them, and then if they ask us to do something which is against religion, that we are not required to obey them. And finally, as parents ourselves, if we pray for them, then this prayer should be that God, make our children think of us when we grow old, create kindness in their hearts, make their hearts soft, make their hearts polite for us. So I think it's a beautiful ending to these sets, this set of verses, or these sets of verses which I just narrated before you, to encompass the rights of the parents as well as our attitude vis-a-vis our parents. So I think that if you have any questions regarding these verses, we'll also take them up. But first, I would like you to actually attempt some of these comprehension questions. And as you can see, that these verses are the verses in which we were told that, I mean, something which was very common to these verses, which you have also might have noticed, is that we have to show kindness to our parents. We have to treat them in a very, very gentle and very, very polite way. So the question that I had, or I have included here, is that as you can just read, the first of these questions is, the verse asks us to be thankful to our parents. So we have to show gratitude to them. What are the various ways of showing gratitude to our parents? So this is a small question for all of you, that this verse is very, it's something which tells you to do. You have to be thankful to your parents. Now, being thankful to your parents, showing gratitude to our parents is something, of course, that you can clearly see is left to ourselves, that how exactly can we show gratitude to our parents. So my question to all of you would be, and you can take a couple of minutes, I'll just give you some minutes to think that some of the ways, and it would be good if you could jot them down in your on a piece of paper maybe, or on your phones or on your computer, whatever is available, that some of the things that we as children need to do to express gratitude to our parents. So take some time, think about these, and I'll come back to you. Okay, I think you should have thought of something by now, and I'm going to request some of you to come up with what they would like to share. So let me first give the opportunity to any person who would like to speak first. Any one of you would like to express anything regarding how we can show gratitude to our parents. So he or she is now free to express opinions. So we have Anusha. Okay, Anusha, please go ahead.
So most of what I've written can be encompassed by just the words of taking care of them when they're old, when they're sick, when they're in need, when they're around the house, when our mothers or fathers are working, or cleaning, just be of assistance.
Okay, so taking care of them, you would include helping them out in their chores, being by their side when they need you. Ali, what would be your addition to this?
Showing them affection.
Okay, so that has almost been taken care of by Anusha when she just said that you have to care for them and you have to be around for them. So affection is something which she has also pointed out, I would say. Anything else that comes to your mind? Okay, Alicia, what about you?
Showing them respect.
Showing them respect. Okay. Okay. Almira.
I would say to understand and care for their needs, even if they don't express it to us verbally.
Okay, so the addition that you are making is that even if they don't ask you, you have to reach out to them first, and they might be having emotional needs, they might be having physical needs. So it would be like taking the initiative and helping them out and taking care of them. Thank you for that. And then your sister Amira.
Yes, the point I have is that we have to try our best not to do things that disappoint them, as a reminder to what they did to us, they did for us.
Okay, so it's like not doing those things which disappoint them. Could you give an example?
Like for example, if I can give an easiest example, is that we have to try our best to get in like studies, we have to try to get our best potential so that we can get the best grades in order
Okay.
to make them proud.
So, okay, so the point that you're making is that you do something which really makes them happy and proud. For example, if you're studying, what would make them very happy would be that if you achieve high grades, if you are a high achiever, that would be something that would really be, they would really feel happy about it. So you do something to make them happy. So that's a very good point. Thank you for that, Amira. Okay, I now have Fatima and Ariba.
Paying full attention to them, like putting your phones away when you're speaking to them, and giving gifts.
Okay, that's nice. So that's a good point, Fatima. Is that Fatima or Ariba?
Fatima.
And would Ariba like to add anything to that?
Basically hugging them and expressing your love,
Okay.
obeying them immediately.
So one thing that the two of you have said, which is different and which is something new to us, would be that to give gifts to them. This is something very nice. That you, of course, there are birthdays which come up, you give them gifts, but other than birthdays, there are so many events in which you feel thankful that they have done a lot. So don't wait for a birthday to come up or an occasion to come up. Even in ordinary days, think of something that they would like, maybe something to wear, something to eat, anything that they would find useful. So that's a very good suggestion, Fatima. And the suggestion that I like very much from Ariba is that she said that you hug your parents, and that's a beautiful thing. Remember that as parents, that when you give that emotional touch to your attachment to your parents, it really helps them. Life is not just mere intellect, it's not just mere mechanical in nature. A lot of it has to do with emotions, and these emotions are best expressed when you have bodily contact. For example, kissing them, hugging them, doing all sorts of things which might even, in a very good way, tease them. It shows your affection, it shows your attachment. So I think that's a beautiful point that you have made, Ariba, that hugging them is something which at times we find missing. Although there are so many children who do that, but I think that this is something that we should perhaps do more often. And I just remembered just about a couple of days ago, and I am 54 years old, and my mother, mashallah, is close to 80. And one day she was standing and said that, oh, well, why don't you hug me? And I realized, well, yes, she's saying something which I should have been doing very frequently. So I just embraced her and she embraced me. And I got that feeling as if I was being drenched with my mother's love. And I'm sure that she would have gotten that feeling that someone is being very protective of her. So I think that I also realize that this is something which we should often do. So thank you for reminding us that, Ariba. Okay, I would now like to ask Josefa.
Financially supporting them when they need something, like if they want something in their home, like clothes or other stuff, like the electricity bill.
So that would be when you grow up and you are earning yourself. So that would be also a beautiful gesture, that when you grow up, you're earning, so you look after some of the expenses. And these expenses, as you can see, they lessen their burden, and many a time you feel as if you have contributed to them. So that is a very good suggestion, Josefa. Thank you for that. Back to you, Maria.
I said listening to the instructions and obeying the decisions.
Okay. Okay, I have something to say about that, but I'll come to that later. There are certain things in which you, of course, you have to honor the wishes of your parents, but always remember that as far as some of the major decisions in life are concerned, for example, the choice of a career, etc. These are some of the areas, or maybe a lot of other ones as well, in which if you make a decision and that decision is different from that of your parents, then it's not incumbent upon you to obey your parents, because you see, basically it's your life, it's your decision, it's your profession that you're adopting. So yes, obeying them in normal circumstances in which, for example, their own rights are concerned, this is something very called for. But don't think that you are obligated to follow the advice or the decision of your parents in some of the major decisions which relate to your life. You are absolutely independent. You can take your own decision. I say this because I have seen so many children feel guilty that when they take a decision in their life which is different from their parents, they think that they are disobeying them. Remember, this is not what the Quran is telling us. It is telling us that this obedience has to be regarding their own rights. We must not be disobedient as far as their rights are concerned. But taking a decision in life regarding our career or maybe a choice of spouse, it relates to our rights, not their rights. So in this, we are absolutely independent. So just this thing that might be of help to you. So thank you very much for that. Okay, so Maria Iqbal,
Yes.
you said that, huh? You were the one who said.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Sophia.
I came up, I came up with three. The first one was, if they get angry, consider their point of view. The second one is, if you disagree with them, don't be rude. And the third one was, prioritize them.
So what do you mean by prioritizing them?
Making time for them.
Oh wow, that's beautiful. So I think that's a beautiful thing that you have added, is to give time to them. Of course, not being angry and not showing disregard is absolutely of paramount importance. But the important thing that you have said here, and which is something which all of us must appreciate, is to give time to them, and to spend time to them, to have some of these small talks with them, to share your experiences, what you did during the day, and this actually causes a lot of enjoy. I mean, it elates them. It makes them so much happy to hear about what their child might have done in a particular day, or any achievement that she or he might have made. Okay, so that's brilliant, Sophia. And I'll now ask Meher Fatima.
Complimenting them, like their food, if the food they make, and other gifts they give you when they dress up to go somewhere.
Oh, that's beautiful as well. So, like, it's complimenting them by telling them that how thankful you are to them, and you praise them that you're doing so much for us, and therefore, if they make some good meal, they cook some good meal for you, your mother particularly, or they give you some dress to wear which you really like them, or maybe the way they themselves dress up, you compliment them, you praise them, and this, of course, is another emotional support that you provide them. And I think it's a beautiful suggestion, Meher. Thank you for that. It's now Muhammad.
Be thankful to them
Mhm.
and be kind to them, fulfill their command by heart, give them suitable facilities.
Okay. Provide them with suitable facilities. That would be when you grow up. So you could do something which is really good for them. Like, for example, teach them how they can be more active on the social media, things like Skype or WhatsApp or Snapchat, I mean, in which they can make themselves busy, and they can connect to their children and to other people living across the world. So that would also be a very nice thing to do, to make them, to empower them with these gadgets that we use today and which keep us busy. So at times our grandparents, and by the way, do remember that our grandparents are also included when we talk about parents. So if your parents are young, they're already aware of how to use these things in the social media. Remember that you might be having grandparents also, and these grandparents need pampering, they need time, and they need to be connected to your family. So if you could teach them these instruments and these gadgets, it can really help them, and it can make them busy, which is of utmost need when you grow up in age. Thank you for that, Muhammad. And so, Azan, anything that comes to your mind?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Please go ahead.
About the first question,
Yeah.
I just think that we have to like follow what they ask us to do, like commands, and we have to do what they tell us to do.
Okay.
I think that's showing gratitude.
Okay.
To parents.
Okay. Okay. Fair enough. Musa, it's your turn. Okay, I'll go to Rayan. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I said to just express your emotions to them and to let them know how you feel, because I feel like that can also build connection with your parents, which sometimes isn't really formed nowadays.
Right. Okay, that's perfect as well. That you express your emotions, you express your feelings. Maybe someday you feel disappointed in what happened at work, what happened at your school, and some days you feel very happy at something that you did in school or at something which happened in school. So it's like sharing your experience, sharing what you went through. It could be grief, it could be disappointment, it could be happiness, it could be joy, it could be all sorts of things. So I think that's also a beautiful point, Rayan, to share your inner feelings with your parents, and that really cements that bond between yourself and your parents, because it is here now you're confiding in them, you're making them realize that I would like to express what I have felt today with you, and that is something which would, I think, really do wonders with their confidence and their connection with you. So thank you for that. So Rayan, Ali, would you like to express something?
I think that caring for them when they're old and need your help is one of the best ways to show gratitude, as they cared for you when you required assistance and now you should return the favor.
Okay, fair enough. That you are actually uh, practically doing something when they need you. Remember, as we just discussed earlier on, that when parents grow old, they typically return to the very first stage of their life. They become like children, and you have to treat them, and you have to be patient with them, and you have to offer time to them. You have to offer all sorts of things that, imagine what they did for you when you were growing up, and you were doing all sorts of tantrums, you were doing all sorts of, you were playing all sorts of pranks, and they were patient and they were very considerate. So this is like having that payback time. And also think, my dear, that perhaps we can never pay back our parents, because the amount of services and the amount of effort they have put in is huge. It's simply huge. So when you are in that chunk of life in which you are paying back your parents, never think that you are doing something which you can actually completely discharge, because I think the services and the efforts that they have done, they far outweigh what we can do for them when we are in that position to help them. Okay, so thank you for that. Okay, Samin?
Yeah, so I think that one way we could show them that we're grateful for them is like prioritize spending time with them. So like maybe that would mean that you have to spend less time with your friends. And I think another way would also be like, I think this has been said, but maybe, just taking care of them as well. So maybe cooking them a meal or doing the house chores. Or like small presents, just to appreciate.
Okay, let me ask this small thing to you, Samin. Have you ever cooked something for your mother?
I have, yes.
Oh, really? Wonderful.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. And what did you cook?
I've actually cooked quite a few things, just because I've actually gone to uni, so I've learned stuff on my own, and then whatever I learned, I made that for my family here. Yeah.
Oh, that's so beautiful to hear. Thank you, Samin.
Thank you. No problem.
Okay, and so we have Sana Iqbal.
Like praying for them and embracing the things they do for you.
Okay, so praying for them and praising the things that they do for you.
Embracing
the things. Okay, so of course this is also a very important thing, that as these verses also mention, that you never think that praying for them is something that is very ordinary or trivial. It has a lot of effect on you. It's your expression of sincerity towards your parents before the Almighty. So it's not just the prayer for forgiveness which these verses mention, You can do all sorts of prayers for your parents, for their health, for their well-being, for their being properly taken care of. So remember the power of the prayer, as we have also discussed in some other sessions. It's huge, and our own expression of sincerity towards our parents is perhaps best realized and best manifest. It manifests in its best, one of its best forms, when we actually do this dua and pray for them. Okay, that's beautiful. Thank you. Sine.
I agree with what people have said before, but maybe add on being patient in general, not just in old age.
Okay, so the thing that you are stressing and maybe adding on is that being patient with them, which of course is also a very, very important thing. That remember, when parents grow old, they need this special patience, because at times they repeat things, at times they are they do things when we were growing old or we were growing up, and we did certain things, and they would be very patient for us as a result. So it's like doing exactly the same thing. Thank you for that, Sine. Okay, Zara, it's your turn. Zara Bernie.
I have listening to them whenever they ask us to do something, as well as respecting whatever decision they make and giving them small presents.
Okay, so the thing that you have added perhaps is that you have to listen to them, and that is again something which is quite unique. So when you sit beside them, just as you would like to share what you have maybe done during the day, you should also be patient and maybe ask them that what they have done during the day and how they would like to share some of their experiences. So that is also a very good form of connectivity. Thank you for that, Zara. Zirak?
I think it's about showing gratitude to them, and I think it's more about being independent and showing them that they do right.
Okay. So showing gratitude to them, and what is the other thing that you said?
Being independent to show that they raised you well.
Being independent to show
that they raised you well.
Oh, that they raised you well. Okay. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Zirak. That's well said. Zoya, it's your turn.
I would say try to remember their teachings and then use that in your life.
Okay.
And just show them that like you've respected what they've taught you.
Okay, that's also very fine. Okay. So thank you very much, friends. You have done a lot of thinking, and I have made notes from what you have said, and like not being angry with them, not being rude to them, complimenting them, expressing your thankfulness to them, giving them time, cooking them with meals, paying attention to them, taking them out, listening to them, sharing your achievements with them, taking care of them by maybe ironing their clothes or washing their clothes, etc., showing affection, respect, understanding. I think these are all things that you have contributed. They're all beautiful, and of course, remember that when we have done this exercise, the purpose is that as much as we can, we should program ourselves and think in advance. That it's always easy to write down things, but another thing is to practice them. So let us all make this commitment to our own selves that whatever we have just discussed, inshallah, we will try our best that we are able to do what we have said here to the best of our abilities. Something that comes to my mind, or maybe a point or two, would be that you always respect the friends of your parents as well and be kind to them, because that is also which makes them very happy. Similarly, if they would like to take you someplace out, I know that in our current situation, it's very difficult for children to always be with their parents when they are going out to meet some relative, maybe, or to some function, or to any festivity that might be going on in the family. But take that extra pain, make that extra effort, if every once in a while, if you can, to be just as you converse with your parents, be very good to their friends. And similarly, if your parents would like to take you out somewhere and they would wish you to do something, so even if you might not be very, you might be pressed regarding time, if you could make that extra effort, it would be wonderful. So I think that another thing which might also help you is that when you grow up and when you have children, you have to tell your children to respect their grandparents, which are your parents, in fact. So it's like transferring this legacy to the next generation, so that this torch can be lit, and it should be kept high above you. That every generation, as it grows old and it has its own children, the children are advised that they should be respectful to the grandparents, and in this way you'll have that reverse thing happening, and at the same time the legacy moving forward as well. So and I think it was a beautiful and a very, very learning discussion that we just had. So I'll also thank you for that. Now let's move on to some of the other questions. Okay, the second question is that which might be, something that you can really do, because this is something which children face, and that is enlist some of the wrong attitudes of your parents. So in spite of being people who are very caring of you, very gentle, very polite, they do a lot of sacrifices. Of course, they are not, none of us is an angel, and there are certain wrong attitudes which in general we find emanating from our parents. So I would like to now start in the reverse order, and let me ask Zoya Bernie. Zoya, anything that you'd like to share with us vis-a-vis the wrong attitude, or you would say unjustified attitudes of parents? I'm not talking about your parents or any parents. I'm talking about parents in general, in the world that we are living in the society that we are living in. If you just look at the people around you, how would you say that what are some of the very common wrong attitudes of parents?
I would say that one of them is when parents decide to not listen to their children.
Okay.
Because it can happen that same way that we ask about our parents' day, or we tell our parents about our day, sometimes they may sort of dismiss that.
Okay.
And not show a lot of interest, which can be kind of negative for any kid to feel like your parents don't care.
So this would be particularly in that case in which you feel that whatever you're doing is perfectly justified, and your parents are not listening to you, even though the thing that you're asking them is perfectly legitimate, perfectly okay, and that is at times very annoying and frustrating. So it's Zara Bernie.
I think adding on to what Zoya said, when they don't make time for you,
okay,
which shows that which makes a child feel like they don't care very much.
Right. So there are two things that might be important here. One of them is that they are deliberately not giving you time, and that is of course very painful. But there are situations in which because of this economic crunch and a lot of activities being going on, at times both your parents are very heavily involved in doing their jobs and doing their professional work. Even if they have an objective in life, they are devoted to that objective. So maybe it is here that we should be much more considerate. Just as children, we might be having something very important going on, and for a particular period of time we are so busy that we are not being able to give time to our parents. So I think that these could be counted as exceptions. But as far as the fact is concerned, when they can give time, and when time is available to them, and they're still not giving us that time, and they are more involved in some of the very ordinary or trivial work, or maybe some thing that they are doing without realizing that they have responsibility relating to their children. So would I be right in saying that? There's an exception?
Yeah, I think that it depends on the situation.
Right. Okay.
Each family is in.
Right. Let me ask Sine.
Maybe when parents make certain assumptions, or they punish more than is necessary.
Okay, so that is also a point taken, that at times they don't have the complete data, or they might have insufficient data, and they do something which is much more than which is actually warranted. Sana Iqbal.
When parents don't agree to the fact that they're in the wrong and you aren't.
Okay, so this is also something which is very commonly found, that they always think that they are right. That there are parents who think that they have to, they are the ones who are always at right, and the children are always at fault, and they don't give this thought that they could be wrong, and this of course results in a big deadlock between the children and the parents. Yes, that is a very valid point. Samin.
I think sometimes parents can compare their children to like other children
All
or
right.
other children's
Okay.
achievements. Yeah.
So,
So sometimes
yes, this is very discouraging as well. It's
might disregard.
right, right. So it's so frustrating when they start making those comparisons, which are many a time totally unwanted. And instead of maybe encouraging you, these comparisons they actually discourage you, and they think that you are good for nothing. So yes, that is a very valid point. Mustafa Bari. Okay, let me ask Rayan Wahidi.
I think one of the wrong attitudes that some parents have is spoiling their kids, and I feel like that implements wrong behaviors in like the long run whenever they get older.
Right. So that is also a very important point that you are making. That's to spoil the kids. This at times happens when you fulfill all their desires, whatever your child wants. You just blindly fulfill the desire that he or she might be having, and this and not realizing that at times if you have to make your child a little tough, a little more considerate of other people, it has to be that you make him realize or her realize that there are certain things which might not be correct for him or her to have at this age. But out of their extreme love, they think that they're showing love. But what happens is that they are spoiling their child and they are making that child irresponsible, because you see, when you get everything in life, you start becoming careless. You start disregarding your duties. So yes, this is a very valid point, Rayan. And what about Rayan Ali?
I think like including children into like the parents' fights is probably
Right.
one of the worst points. Like if two parents want to get a divorce or something and they make the kid choose between which parent he wants to stay with, that's quite scarring.
Right. So, Rayan, that's a very, very vital point that you have made, that and unfortunately things go wrong and the parents start asking the children to take sides. And it's so difficult for the child, because for him or her, the father and the mother are equal. And when they are put pressure upon that you should take one of the, you should side by one of them, it really becomes very difficult and very, very frustrating, and it has a lot of pressure. So yes, that's a very valid point. Okay, let me make this a little easier for you, because as you have rightly pointed out, there are a lot of things which have already been pointed out by many of you. So let me give you a free turn, that any one of you who would like to express what more they have noted vis-a-vis these wrong attitudes, anything that comes to their mind, any one of you.
The double standards that they set for their children.
Right.
Where they say that, oh, you are a girl, you have to be home at 5 p.m.
Okay.
Or they're not given a specific time to be home. Or general abuse, whether that's emotional or physical.
Right. So that is also something which goes on in our society, that they have these double standards in which they are at times forcing you to do something, while at the same time they themselves are not following that. And this is something, of course, or at times they are selective. They would ask some of the children, or maybe one of the child, to do something, and the other child is dealt with in a different way. So it's like having that disparity in their attitude as well. Okay, that's well done. Now, Almira.
Maybe ignoring their child's perspective and through that misunderstanding them.
Right. So this is also a very crucial point that you have actually made, that they're not fully empathetic, I would say. They don't understand that their child or their daughter or son might be having a very valid point, and you are not willing to even give any latitude or any consideration to what your child or your might be thinking of, and you're just unilaterally just dismissing because you have a particular agenda in your mind. Okay, so it's Fatima and Ariba.
Yep. As said in one of the verses that we read, associating someone with God, so practicing polytheism.
So
and also when they engage in any criminal behavior.
Right. So if it's like doing something which is bad, and you as a child would really feel embarrassed that your father or your mother is doing something which is really which is blatantly wrong. It could be some immoral thing, it could be some irreligious thing, and you feel that you just cannot defend what your parents are doing, or one of the parent might be doing, and you feel very embarrassed, and you would not like to even share, and maybe if people get to know what they are doing, that's even more of a difficulty, that you just cannot face people outside because they know what their parents are doing. So yes, that's a very important point. So Amira, is it Amira? So we just had Almira, it's now Amira.
Yes. I had a similar point to what my sister said. It's basically that misunderstanding between parents and their children can lead to like big mistakes and punishments being given or done.
Okay.
So that misunderstanding needs to be cleared out.
So that is something which again it relates to that they are not very well versed, they are not very considerate of the of what their children are. Okay, Ahmed Mujtaba.
My point was that they have too many great expectations from their child. Like it gives them stress to the children, and they ask a lot sometimes. So it's really hard to live up to their expectations.
Right. So as Charles Dickens said, great expectations. Okay, yes, fine. Great expectations and high expectations without realizing that your child or your son or your daughter might be having a particular, he or she might be having a particular excuse, a very, very valid excuse for not performing very high. There could be some mishap, or there could be something that he or she might need as help, and parents don't realize this. Instead of giving them this concession, they are very, in fact, let me share this thing with you, that it is this pressure which is put on the children that has really worked very badly. As some of you might be in college and some of you might be in high school, as you grow along, I'm sure you must have heard of so many very tragic, very, very tragic incidents like suicides happening in your college, university years, in which simply because the child is not being able to come up to the expectations of the parents, and they would not like to share the results if they are not performing very highly, and when their father or the mother puts this pressure on them. I have personally seen in my life so many bad things happen, and the worst of these is these attempts of suicide which goes on in universities. I know universities across the world in which there are these bridges in which people jump off, children jump off because they think that this is the easiest way out to take their lives, and they have these nets extending below those bridges, so that the first prevention that could be made to have them protected from this dire death would be that those nets catch them, and maybe this next time they would not. So all kinds of student counseling goes on in these universities, in which they try to counsel the parents also, that if they have these undue expectations because of the fact that today's studies are so competitive, and getting higher marks is not easy at all, especially when you are in your higher grades, that if they expect something out of you which is at times very unnatural, and times it's unrealistic, it can have a heavy toll. And how much heavy can it be when seeing your child lose his life or her life? So this is a very, very important point that you have made, and I think that this pressure from the parents is something that they have to be made to understand that this is something which is really, really taking its toll, and we must avoid that. So thank you very much for that. I see Anusha would like to say something else. You have raised your hands.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say that in some cases, parents don't provide their children, who are in some cases, of course, teenagers or young adults, with adequate privacy.
Right.
Of course, they do it in the sense where if a parent wants to track their child's phone, there are some that do it out of pure, I want to know if you're safe, but there are also others that say, I don't really trust where you are. I need confirmation that you're here, who you're with, where you're going, and if anything falls short of their unrealistic worldview, they shut the child down, that no, you're not going with.
Absolutely right, Anusha, that they don't respect the privacy of their children, and they think that their children are not fully grown up, even if they are mature adults, They don't realize that they have a right to their own lives, and even if there's something wrong that they are doing, parents must realize that when they were passing through this phase, they were also doing some things that they might not be very proud of. So respecting the privacy, respecting the personal preferences of their children, and giving them that breathing space in which they have their own personality is very important. And I have seen parents around the world not realizing this, and they poke their nose in a lot of things which actually are so trivial, but they are so important to the child. It's like their personal space that they are intruding into without realizing that this is something which could have happened years and years ago when he was a baby, but not anymore, because now a child is a grown-up individual. He or she has his or her own preferences. So yes, Anusha, thank you very much for that. So do we have any other input from, let's say, Maria, Sophia, or anyone else?
I have two.
Okay.
The first one is never saying no because it might hurt them. And the second one is sheltering them from the real world when they mature. So
that is the point that you're making, is that your parents are a bit of a spoilers, because when they say no, they don't say no. Actually, they're accepting everything that their children are doing. And the other thing that you mentioned is that by protecting them, and this is especially the case then when mothers, they protect their children when they do something wrong, and even fathers do that. So yes, that's a very important point, that when someone is doing something wrong, when your child, this is not the time to protect one, especially when it relates to people outside the family or outside your own inner space, when there are people who might be they might have been dealt with unjustly by your child or in a bad manner, and then instead of maybe trying to make your child understand, you just protect your child and you don't let that child being exposed as far as the weaknesses are concerned. Yes, that is a very important point, and I'm really happy and very, very pleasantly surprised that all of you have so many points to make, because all of these are so valid and they're so representative of the society that we are living in. I see Almira having something else to say.
Yes, sir. Just adding to what you said, I've seen a lot of people, especially these days, a lot of parents saying that it's okay for their child to perform a certain way because they're teenagers. So, for example, letting them do whatever they want, or things that are pertaining to what teenagers usually do, being rebellious or something like that, and passing that off as their age as an excuse that it's okay to do certain things because of their ages.
Okay, so this is undue concession or undue leniency, I would say, that instead of maybe checking them or maybe letting them know that this is something that they should be careful, they give this pretext that because the child is growing up, he's a young one, and so therefore if he does this or she does this, then it should be ignored. Yes, that's an important point, especially if the things that they are doing are not very pleasant things. Then again here, the parents, just as they are over strict at times, we have this syndrome in which they are over lenient at times. So both these extremes are not worthy. You must not be over strict and you must not be over lenient. It has to be somewhere in between. Right. So Meher Fatima, you have something to share.
Yes. Also, it's kind of related to a few points that have already been said, but disregarding the new perspectives that your child is growing up or being exposed to, just because of tradition or old-fashioned thinking. Like, for example, how a lot of parents are very rude to people at restaurants or shops, and rude to the employees who are being very patient, but they're unnecessarily rude. But they're also someone else's child, and they're also be working hard to do something. It's a different case if they are rude themselves, but some people are like unnecessarily.
Right.
That's why.
So particularly if they are rude to maybe your attendants, to your servants, to your employees who are working, who are your domestic help, and if they are abusing them, or maybe not exactly abusing them, but maybe not treating them kindly enough, and at the same time they might expect you to treat them kindly, but they themselves are not doing so. And you're absolutely right that this occurs in so many homes, that the lady of the home maybe, or the gentleman of the home, he or she might not be very considerate of the people who are domestic workers in that particular house. This is something which is very, very heart-rending. It's heart. I mean, you feel so helpless because they are individuals. They have their self-esteem. They have their self-respect, and you feel that as if something. I mean, you feel ashamed of facing such people, because when your parents are doing something of the sort, it simply does not have any excuse. Yes, right. So that's a very valid point. I can see Ahmed Mujtaba. You would like to say something else?
Yes, sir. I wanted to say that sometimes parents are overprotective, so they
Mm-hmm.
restrict their children,
Okay.
and this leads on to like less exposure in the outer world, so they suffer later on.
Right. So being overprotective, not letting them go through the toughness in life, providing them with a lot of luxury and comfort, makes them easygoing, makes them careless, makes them irresponsible at times. Of course, that is something very important. And by the way, my friends, I would expect that the things that you have pointed out, all of them are, they do exist in our society. Each one of you have said something which is based on absolutely true statistics. But okay, let's also make this commitment before we sign off this question, that if these are some of the questionable attitudes of our parents, then when we become parents, or when you become parents, let us not repeat these attitudes. Because you see, it's easy to point out something wrong, and it's much more difficult not to follow the same thing when we come into their position. So remember, inshallah, each one of you is going to be a parent one day. So if you make a list of all these things, even a mental note of all these things, the point that we need to take home from today's discussion is that we should not behave the same way, or some of these faults that we have just pointed out, they should not be carried on by us, because that is how it would be really, really befitting to sort of mend the attitude. You might not be able to mend the attitude of your parents because they have grown up and they are maybe now it's difficult for them to change. But what you can do is to change yourself. When you take their place, when you become parents, then let not these blemishes emanate from us. So thank you very much for this. And now, very briefly, I'm just going to ask you regarding the last question, and that is that how can you deal with harsh parents? You see, we live in a society, as you said, that some of the parents, they are very, very strict. They are unduly strict. But what can you do? Because you just cannot change your parents. You just cannot run away from your home. Unfortunately, although it does happen that because of this strictness and harshness and rude behavior, there are children who do run away. But of course, that's not the solution. So very, very quickly, if you could, any one of you could say anything regarding how to deal with these, with such harsh parents. Yes, Azan?
You would talk to them in a nicely like manner, like try to explain to them and to see if they understand your point. Like explain really nicely to them so they could understand.
Okay, so that's also a very important suggestion, that instead of getting put off, instead of running away, a good thing would be that you talk to them. If you talk to them politely, you talk to them gently, and at times you don't even need to talk to them. Maybe you can write them a message, you can send them an email, because you see, this avoids confrontation. When you talk to your parents, there could be situations in which they have an answer to you, and then you answer back, and the things goes back and forth, and it becomes a futile exercise. So although in certain scenarios it could be useful, but always pick and choose. If you think that confrontation can arise, you can just send an email, send a message, or anything which is indirectly brought to their notice. And I think this is a very important point that you have made here, Azan, that the thing is that the communication line must never break. However harsh they may be, however rude they may be, but the solution is not that you just cut yourself off from them. The solution is that you make them yourself even more close to them by talking to them gently. That's a beautiful point that you have made. So anyone else who would like to contribute? Okay, because this is a very, very sensitive topic, let me just give you a very few small tips that might help. One thing that also has helped as people share their experiences is that you can use a third party interference, a third party a person who can help you, maybe someone who you respect and your parents also respect, they have trust in, they have faith in. So if the direct communication is not working, you can go the indirect way, confide in someone who can indirectly talk to your parents, and this also actually at times has a very important effect, because on such occasions parents might not give weight to their children, but when it comes from someone else whom they trust, then they start giving weight to them as well. Okay, before I go on, I'd like to hear out Fatima or Ariba what they have to say.
So basically, to be patient and to pray to God.
What did you say? What was the first point?
To be patient.
To be patient.
And to pray to God.
Okay, so to be patient and to pray to God. Of course, this is also very important that if they are rude, if they are harsh, you have to be patient. But you know, Fatima or Ariba, what happens is that at times your patience runs, you run short of patience, because too much of a harsh behavior puts you at end, and it's difficult. So of course, praying for them, asking God to make them realize their folly is also a very important thing. But before you pray to God, always remember that some of the efforts that you can do in making them realize is also is going to work. And I think one of the things that you can really make them yourself effective is that try to make friends with them. You see, if they are harsh in particular ways, you disregard that harshness and take another turn, and the points which you and they would love to discuss and which you might have in common, you could have common interests, you could have common objectives, you start communicating more on those areas, so that free communication is always there. And at the same time, you are also trying to come closer to them, trying to realize and analyze that what exactly is making them harsh. You see, one of the reasons that make parents harsh is that they feel insecure. They feel very, very insecure, and they think that their children might just run away from them, they might go away from them, and they think that if they are not strict with their children, then something bad will happen to them. So actually what you need to do is you make them realize, you give them this confidence that whatever is happening is well under your control. You are an individual who is seeing what right and wrong are, and at the same time respecting the wishes of your parents, and also addressing the concerns that they have. So I think this friendship connection, if you start building upon that in some of the other areas which are common between you, it has worked wonders. And last but not the least, realize that this is a challenge for you. You cannot change your parents. So take it as a challenge in life. Think of ways that in which you are able to come closer to them, because remember that in spite of all this harshness that you encounter, you still have been the beneficiary of a lot of things that they did for you when you were growing up. So it's easier to run away, it's difficult to stay and being patient. So thank you very much, my dear friends, for having this wonderful opportunity, availing this opportunity in expressing your concerns. I have learned a lot, and I think that the best thing that we can do from this discussion is that we take home some of the things that we have pointed out regarding these attitudes that we need to mend as far as children are concerned, and especially how we can be grateful to our parents, and of course show this gratitude through practical means. Thank you very much for being here with us. Inshallah, we'll be back once again next week with some new readings from the Quran. Until then, it is Khuda Hafiz from your teacher.